Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Annette and today I'll be showing you some of the presets I've made for street photography. Now I named my pack Mono City because it's inspired by 8 cities that I visited and fall in love with, so that's kind of giving me inspiration for these presets. And I never really made them, intentionally. It just sort of happened as I was editing, so I just basically end up with these presets after a few years of shooting. And I don't use heavy editing on my pictures, as in I don't do things like composites and just like really in-depth editing. So I kind of use these presets as a starting point. And let me just remind you that any preset you use will never ever be 100% right. You will have to use it as a starting point to get to where you want your picture to be. So the first one I named Amsterdam. Let me show you. So it is a quite simple black and white, which I think fits quite a few types of pictures, and it is quite a soft one, I would say. Now the image itself is quite soft as well because there's quite a few similar tones, and to change that a little bit you can add some more contrast if you like, just a tiny bit, and you can also use the same with clarity if you want a bit of grittiness. If you don't, you can just leave it back to where it was. So for this one, I added a tiny bit of grain. Again, I don't use a heavy grain, and you can either remove it or add some more if that's what you like. I would crop this image, crop this guy out, but that's not the point. I did shoot this image in Milan, so not quite Amsterdam, but there you go. And I'll show you the same preset on a bit different image. So here we have quite a few whites, we have darks, shadows, so there's quite sort of contrasty image, and I think it suits the preset really nicely. Like, I wouldn't really do much else to it, to be honest. Maybe bit of highlights down just for the dog's face to come out a little bit, but that's just personal preference. And yeah, for me this is quite a versatile preset, and like I say, you can play around with contrast, shadows, highlights. So the basic section of editing is where I would generally go. Now the next one is quite similar, but this time it will be a bit more toned. So this image was taken in Milan as well, I believe, but I named this preset Berlin. There we go. And it's quite similar, quite sort of soft look to it, but it has a bit of split toning. You can see just a tiny bit in shadows, not a lot at all. I don't like my images to be sort of really orange or brown. I just like to add a tiny bit of warmth just to soften up and just kind of make the image come alive a little bit, because black and white sometimes can be a bit cold almost. And again, same here, I would maybe play a bit with highlights just to bring them down a tiny bit and bring whites up. Obviously that's depending on how you like your pictures to be, and you can do the same in tone curve if you like. For example, you can bring this area, which is the shadows, you can bring that down a bit, if that's what you prefer. So yeah, and then even though, like I said, it's quite soft preset, it's not very contrasty, it works quite nicely for quite stark images as well. For example, this one, taken in broad daylight with the sun shining. Let me just crop this so it's not bugging me. Actually, let's go there. This was taken in London, I believe. Again, not quite Berlin, but that'll do. So you can see it's already quite nicely contrasty here with the shadows, quite stark, beautiful light. And again, I really wouldn't do much else to this one. These two, Amsterdam and Berlin, are quite my go-to presets for general editing in black and white. So next one is Copenhagen. Now this one is really, really gritty, and I think a lot of people like this kind of gritty, raw, grainy, contrasty look to their street images. And what it does, like for example in this picture, I feel like it brings the attention straight to people's faces, especially this guy smoking here, this little girl on the bike. And obviously in color, our eyes go directly to the red coat, there's this green bike and things like that. But in black and white, your eyes go directly to the subject's faces, I believe. And I have a bit of grain here. Oopsie. There we go. Tiny bit of grain. Again, you can play around with that to make sure it suits what you're looking for. And this one is a really contrasty preset. You can tone it down a little bit if that's what you like. And to me, it looks quite sort of film-y, film-esque look, I guess. And let's take a look at tone curve. Again, you can play around here with maybe the highlights and whites if you want to be more washed out look or even more contrasty look. So yeah, this is my starkest, grittiest kind of preset. Doesn't work always for every situation, but I think it can look really quite nice. And for example, in this picture, which again is London, it brings the attention straight to this guy because that, you know, it becomes stark black against the quite light path, I guess, floor, yeah, floor. And the highlights and whites are quite nice and bright here, bringing out all these silhouettes. So for these more harsh, contrasty looks, I think it works really nice. Next one is Krakow, which was actually taken in Budapest. Now, I do like to take selfies when I travel. It's kind of like my personal visual, you know, documentation of where I've been, like a journal, and I like to do these shots from time to time. So this is quite a soft look as well. I would obviously bring out the exposure a little bit, something like that. And it's quite similar to the first one. There's a bit differences in highlights and things. And again, it's quite a nice traditional black and white without being too grey or washed out. I hate when people just convert the pictures to black and white and just leave it as is without any, you know, without changing any settings. To me, it just looks grey, but I have a bit of contrast here. I believe there's a bit of grain as well. So for me, that looks quite nice, and I'll show you on this image as well. There we go. And for this one, you can either, if you want it more stark, obviously I have the shadows all the way up here for this preset. You can bring it down to add a bit more contrast. I'll pull the highlights up just a little bit for this particular image, or you can go all the way back up if you want to see the detail in the shadows. So the next one is London, which was actually shot in London, and I have no idea how I ended up with this preset. It just kind of happened. I fell in love with it. Now again, this is not my go-to preset, but it works, and it did work for this particular situation where we had bright blue sky, not a single cloud, and it just really makes the sky dramatic and makes the architecture stand out. And it's got like a bit of tone both in highlights and shadows. Now I'll show you on this one as well. And for me, it just works. It looks quite surreal, so it is definitely not your everyday kind of editing, but it can work for certain situations. And again, this is just literally one click. I'm happy how it looks here as well. And then the last one I'll show you with the same preset will be on here, which is obviously a London skyline kind of thing. So for this one, I will bring out the shadows just down a bit. There you go. And now we can sort of see the silhouettes on the London tour bus. We can see the beautiful, you know, building tops and everything, and some building works in the background. So yeah, next one is Milan, which was actually shot in Venice, I believe. So this one is it's got sort of like a little bit of red, a bit of pink in the highlights. You can barely see it, but it makes the picture just a tiny bit more warm than just plain black and white. And I really do like this preset. I use this quite a bit in weddings as well. And again, I wouldn't actually do much else to this picture as it is. And I do like to pull the highlights down, so you'll probably notice that in most of my presets, but obviously you can alter that to make it fit your image. I'll show you on this picture as well. Right, so here, because the highlights are all the way down, it does add a bit of funky little banding, I guess. It just looks a bit weird. So I would bring that up to get rid of that. There we go, can't see it. So yeah, for me this adds just a tiny bit of warmth without, it's actually barely noticeable, but for me, I like that, you know, just going away from the plain black and white. Having said that, so next one is in the Paris one. So this one is quite brown. It's not like ugly orangey, greeny, sepia kind of look. And again, it doesn't work for all the shots, but I do like it. It's quite warm, and it looks quite sort of vintagey, retro to me, without being too overpowering and too overly saturated kind of brown. I don't know, to me it just brings out the lady's face, the detail and everything, and I honestly wouldn't do much other editing to this and just leave it as is, I think. And I'll show you on this one as well. Now, please ignore my composition. This was like literally shooting from the hip, wherever I was, I can't remember. I just kind of like this setup of the dishes left. So yeah, to me it just looks more retro, I guess. Let me just pull down the exposure so you can see the dish a bit better. And obviously, like I said, ignore the composition and the angle, but I do like how it looks, and yeah, I think it suits the image. And the last one is Venice, which was actually shot in Budapest. So this is, again, just plain black and white, but this to me is, again, quite filmy looking black and white. Again, as you can see, I pull the highlights down, I bring up the shadows quite a bit so you can see the detail in whatever you're shooting. And again, you know, many people shoot overexposed, many people shoot underexposed, and there's obviously the ones who shoot right spot in the middle. So these presets will not necessarily give you one-click answer to everything, because you'll have to make sure it fits your shooting style. And I always recommend, you know, change the settings to what you like, and feel free to save them over the original preset, because it has to suit your style end of the day. And these presets for me are just like a go-to starting point to get to the destination that I want to get to. And we all have different styles, so it definitely has to fit how we shoot, what we shoot, and how we like to do editing. Again, I wouldn't do much else to this, to be honest. I like as it is. I think there's quite a bit of grain. There's a bit, yeah. And I'll show you this one as well. So this one actually has a tiny bit of split toning. Again, it's just really barely noticeable, but it just kind of livens up the monochrome a little bit. Let me just add a bit of white. There we go. Oh, that's too much. There we go. So yeah, so all these presets are just like, I think it's just a nice way for you to start editing without being too overwhelmed with what should I do, and it gives you a chance to go through different types of monochrome to see what you like and see, you know, what might fit your current gallery that you're editing. And I'll just quickly run through them with this last picture. I just want to show you how they are quite similar, some of them, but they're suited for different situations, and I feel like there definitely is something for everybody, whether you like more contrasty, more soft, and like I said, you can play around with the tone curve to add a bit of the contrast, and obviously with the grain as well, depending on how you like your images, if you want them to be quite clean or if you like a bit of grain and grittiness. So yeah, I'll be posting these presets onto my website, and I will link that below, and hopefully it'll be just something nice for you to use when you're editing your street work. You can apply this on other types of photography as well, obviously, and I would really like to see how you edit them, and hopefully you can maybe share some images if you do buy these presets, and I can share them on my Instagram or, you know, other social media accounts. So thank you for watching, and like I said, I'll link everything below so you can take a look, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.